It is Friday, the 12th of June. Welcome to the KrakCast News. How are you, Mike?
Doing quite nicely. It's getting warmer. I'm enjoying the weather a lot more now than I have in the last few weeks, so it's all good.
Surprisingly sunny speech from you today, Mike. Josh, how are we feeling?
Well, not too bad.
Eyes trained firmly on the ticker, technical details, headphones on. You've no idea how much multitasking our producer extraordinaire does while he delivers such a high quality level of chat, punnery,
And at the same time, can still reach for a drink.
and confusing non sequiturs.
Yes.
Okay, so let's start with coronavirus. You ever heard of that?
It rings a bell.
It's a popular disease that's killing many people around the world and causing us all to watch a lot of television. Okay, we had a spike in the coal mines. Coal mines are closed. 12 coal mines. Talk coal mines.
Oh, yeah. In Śląsk in Silesia, the region of Poland, which is known for its industrial kind of mining and etc., they've had clusters pop up in a few mines, which kind of makes sense because if you're a miner, you get stuck in this little elevator with 45 other people basically face to face for like 10 minutes. They're sending you down that mile and a half. So if one of you has a cold, everybody gets a cold. And in the last few weeks, about 80% of daily infections have been tied to that area. The thing is, very few people are actually sick. There was 1-2 people sick, and they started screening everybody around them.
This is the famous asymptomatic carriers. We don't know much about this. I've been it's kind of been revealed to me through reading a lot of interviews with doctors that they're kind of freaked out by the asymptomatic patients. This is kind of strange to coronavirus to have this. Can you explain that, Mike?
Well, we know now that coronavirus, most people, when they pick it up and spread it, they're not sick whatsoever, as in they don't have any noticeable symptoms. It's somewhere around the range of about 80%. The rest of people that do get sick, the majority of them just get, basically a cold, which, like rhinovirus is basically the main reason of a common cold every year. And then there's a small percentage that actually do have serious symptoms, life-threatening, especially if you're older. But since there are so many asymptomatic patients, especially now being shown in Silesia with all these miners and their families, doctors are worried that this disease will spread further. But then the question is, if it just spreads further, but still the fatality rates and serious complications are low, does it really matter that much?
Yeah, I mean, it ties in, there was a lot of coverage this week on the fact that Poland's, I suppose ranking is a kind of cruel word, but Belgium has 829 deaths per million, and Poland has 31. The lowest being Greece, and 2 other countries between Greece and Poland. But I don't really know at this stage, how useful this information is, Mike.
Well, it basically shows that in Poland the disease never was a threat and still is not a threat.
It doesn't seem to be, shaping public opinion in any way. It seems to be a weird thing. We've gotten into this position of strength, and are we sure what to do next? I mean, it seems to be a little bit like, things are going good, but maybe actually, economically, the next quarter is just going to really make people think things are going badly.
Yes, the consequences of the lockdown and everything we did in reaction to the fear to coronavirus, we're not going to see any ramifications of that at least for another few months. I mean, in Poland, where most people, when they're fired, they have the 3-month grace period, so they're not going to be unemployed for another month or two, and that's when you're going to start feeling the pain because. Even if those grace periods give the companies a possibility to survive through it, a lot of it are dying. If you walk around the old town right now, I'm seeing so many windows closed up with phone numbers like saying, available for rent. In the middle of town, that's not a good sign, and it's not going to get better anytime soon.
You just kind of have this feeling that, and we're gonna move off this quick because I'm sure our regular listeners are sick of hearing us talk about it, to be honest with you. Every week on the KrakCast, this conversation. But let's use the advantages we've gained by being very good about this. Good leadership. I think it's fair to say from the health ministry, good citizenry. Is that the correct word, Josh?
Citizenry is the kind of like the collective for all the citizens. I mean, citizenship is the behaviour of the citizens, I suppose.
I shall take that correction.
Citizenshippery.
Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about something meaty and juicy, like a big pipe.
This wouldn't be the Russians and the Germans.
Occasionally, Josh, people say to me, why doesn't Josh talk more? And as I've tried to explain tonight, A, you're kind of busy, and B, you talk whenever you fucking well like. You know? But this week I am just gonna, put the eggs on your plate and ask you to run the ball on this one. Tell us what we're talking about.
Okay, so I'm going to try and do this concisely and without, hopefully invoking too much in the way of kind of legal ramifications. But we're going back to 2005 when then Chancellor Gerhard Schroeder of Germany was nearing the end of his term. He'd already been kind of, he was kind of a, lame duck chancellor because Merkel had already been elected and she was due to come in. She came in 2 months later. He is on board with the Nord Stream2 project, which is a pipeline from Russia to Germany. The idea being that Germany will be able to secure its gas supplies from Russia without the risk of problems from such kind of antsy countries like Ukraine and whatever. Within a fairly short period of time, kind of Schroeder is on the board of Rosneft, which is the biggest kind of, it's the biggest Russian company, in fact.
Would you like to dwell on how it became the biggest company in Russia? If you don't, I will.
I think I'm going to pass that one over to you because I suspect you have kind of slightly better prepared ammunition.
Well, this is of course, a very, very famous case. Mikhail Khodorkovsky got sent to prison in Siberia, and his company Yukos got broken up and merged into Sibnet, which then got merged into Rosneft. So, Schroeder joined basically a company that just by scale was the largest act of gangsterism in corporate history, basically. That's what this guy has been representing. He's on the board for the last 3 years as well. This is a guy who has plenty to say about your beloved US, Mike. Doesn't seem to have much to say about the dear and beloved Vladimir.
Yes, well, the only time he ever talks to Vladimir is when he's toasting his health, birthday parties, etc. Schroeder generally basically always has something bad to say about the United States, their plans for the current Nord Stream 2 pipeline and sanctions they want to impose. He's saying this is all political, that this is all...
it is political, and since you've stopped on the issue, it's political for the right reasons, if you ask me. Basically, the United States have passed a suite of sanctions which have bicameral and bipartisan support. And
both chambers and both parties.
Basically, what they're proposing is that any company that provides subcontractors to this project will go on a US sanctions list, which is a business nuclear device, in fairness to the US Congress, and has caused absolute hells of anguish in the German business and political community. That's just to give a bit of depth on what you're talking about there, Mike. I assume that's what you meant.
The Germans are upset with this because when you're saying that all companies will be sanctioned, so the ship that's laying the cable, they'll be sanctioned.
And they might also do TV companies.
TV company, the company that insures that ship will be sanctioned. The company that provides catering for that ship might get sanctioned. So this definitely makes it a lot more expensive and difficult. The United States argument for this is wait. We've been paying for your security for the last 50 years. And now you're making basically these deals with a foreign company that is known to use natural resources politically. So you will become now more dependent on natural gas from them while still expecting us to protect you from them.
The most suspicious element to this is they pretty much agreed online on all business analysts that as long as there's German political support for this project, Rosneft will build this pipeline no matter what it costs. Now, what does that tell you? Come on. They'll get the contractors from somewhere and they'll build it themselves.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because, there are no outside investors now in Nord Stream 2 aside from Russia and the German interests involved. Germany is actually, it's kind of not only facing up against America, but also, the rest of the major kind of industrial players in the European Union. This gives a lot of kind of credence to the whole Polish angle about developing alternative fuel sources and, easing their reliance on Russian gas because Nord Stream completely bypasses Poland. It's kind of, it's like gas straight from Russia to Germany.
And the argument that, that it's cheaper, it doesn't make sense because putting a pipeline down the Baltic is a lot more expensive than going through, otherwise friendly countries like Poland or the Baltic states. So the fact that they want to pay more to put in the Baltic means they want to have not financial but political influence over Germany.
And but this is Schröder's predecessor Helmut Kohl was closely linked to Russian relations as well. It's always been the Germans' way of counterbalancing the French influence in the EU. It's their kind of wildcard, kind of foreign ally, and there is a long-standing connection there. And there's a very legitimate reason to oppose Nord Stream 2, and that's Putin's behaviour. How long are we going to let this guy just sit in power, ruling the largest continent on Earth? I mean, we're going to let him as long as he wants to, basically, because there's nothing we can do about it. So that's a ridiculous statement. But what I mean is,
he's a big donator to the show.
I mean, there's a very good reason to oppose this, and a very good reason to applaud any move that gets Poland away from consuming Russian natural gas. I mean, it's still nearly 60% of our total energy intake, and that's why we talk about it on the show all the time. You have to applaud any serious move, in the direction of energy independence.
I think also, I mean, for me at least, it seems to be, almost the kind of, the barefaced effrontery of someone who was, Germany's political leader kind of like almost 20 years ago, basically like scooping up, a very handsome. I mean, he's chairman of the board of Nord Stream 2, as well as continuing to be a board member of Rosneft.
Nobody remembers that just before this switchover happened, he was part of the Germany. He was chancellor, and they were together supporting Nord Stream 1, like in the EU and everything. Let it go.
And of course, the gas company is Gazprom, and they're building the pipeline. But that's what I mean. What I keep going back to is Gazprom's extraordinary statement that they're just going to build it anyway. Yeah. I mean, that just shows you how much political capital the Russians have up in Nord Stream 2. They have been out on the naughty step now since the Bill Browder sanctions, especially, but even going back further than that, since the end of the thaw under Obama. Anyway, I suppose we should move on from our endless bête noire of the Russians. What have we got next? Cocaine. Seized. It's
been a bit of a stuffy nose right now would help.
I'm going to tell you something, right? The link you sent me, Josh, is one of the worst drug seizure articles I've ever seen in my life. Drugs initially brought from Ecuador to Germany where they'd not been detected, and a picture of Mateusz Morawiecki outside a police station. Come on, Paul, get your act together. This is not how you present a massive drug smuggling bust. Put the drugs on the table. Give the shot they want. Let's get some juicy
details. Show the
details.
cops, like, huddle over it or something.
Yeah, get shots of SWAT teams going through any door, blur everyone's faces. Don't even show when you go inside. Play some sinister music. This is useless. Tell us about cocaine smugglers, Mike.
Why would I know so much about it?
El Chapo on the couch there. Yeah.
Well, as we know, most cocaine comes from South America. In this case, we're talking about Ecuador, the most of it. And
there's no actual reason why it has to be grown in South America. Before World War II, I read in a book once, interesting factoid, that the Japanese grew cocaine for their troops on Java and actually far outstripped production in anywhere else in the world. Yeah, it's a massive island like Java, and it used to be a cocaine plantation. Apparently it will and can grow anywhere at the correct
Well, the thing
elevation.
about cocaine before it was like chewed or ingested in a way.
No, not this shit. This was made for the chemical ingestion by lunatic Japanese soldiers, man.
Because from us, like cocaine in the way that we understand it now was something that was only like developed and purified after World War II.
No, they understood it well before that. Freud was coking up, man. They had the chemical formula long before that.
Kind of adds kind of emphasis to that old
Powder
expression.
cocaine was around in the 19th century.
That old expression in the line of duty, doesn't it, really?
Anyway, interesting little fascinating run down Cocaine Avenue there. Robert De Niro is opening a hotel.
We didn't mention how they got the cocaine in.
Yeah, no, because it's not even interesting. They didn't even mention it in the article.
It's basically pineapples.
Basically,
they got
that is interesting.
Frozen.
Why'd you send me a shit link then?
Well, because it was
that has like frozen like canned frozen pineapple, like the mass coming in. It's like, no, there's nothing in there, just pineapple.
Take it all back. This cocaine story has everything.
It's the man from Del Monte.
Tell us more, Mikey.
Can you imagine a pina colada from that? I mean, hell, even I drink it.
I'd just like to let people know,
Instead of
preparing for the actual things we're going to talk about, we usually spend about half an hour to 45 minutes arguing about other political issues in the kitchen that we never again discuss. So it would have been good to know that you knew that beforehand, Mike.
You knew that as well.
Run with your man from Del Monte Narcos story. Come on.
No, basically, it's like this is why it was coming from Latin America, which is huge production.
It is the only producer. I was just being
pineapple,
kind of,
and it's like the mulched down stuff that's then frozen and sent over to be used for other ingredients in Europe. And usually, it's coming in huge
Hawaiian pizzas.
Oh man, even I would eat that one then.
That's quite it. My dad likes pineapple.
No. Sorry, Mr. McGinley. That's
So
wrong.
It went through quickly because first of all, when something is cold and frozen, it's harder for dogs to sniff it out, and as well, it's one of those things that's like going through in huge, massive amounts that they must have known how to tip off that. Yeah, this batch here, it's a little fishy. Check it out.
Sorry, I was looking at the next thing that we're gonna. What were we talking about?
Well, we were still
Robert De Niro.
And cocaine.
We were still all on cocaine. No, that doesn't sound right, does it?
No, it really doesn't, Josh. So Robert De Niro's opening a hotel in Warsaw.
Oh, he knows his cocaine.
Yeah, I mean,
there was a link. Yeah.
He has played a couple of coke addicts, hasn't he? Actually, I can't actually. Now that I think about it, I can't actually remember a time Robert De Niro took cocaine on screen.
It's been widely rumoured in the tabloids that he's enjoyed a line or two with some of his playmates in the past.
That's not what I said.
I know. I said that. And
anyway, I'm just saying he always seems to play the kind of controlled gangster, like the psycho, sure, but on top of his. I'm trying to think. Correct us. Put a comment in anytime.
Talking about his little friend, he didn't seem that calm and collected.
Yeah, he played Al Capone, who was a famous kind of cokehead. So maybe there's a scene in that. But anyway, also, apart from being one of the greatest actors who's ever lived, Robert De Niro is famous for one of the worst kind of streaks of movies. It's kind of brown stain on his legacy in the mid-noughties. And I've always furiously defended the man because he is, apart from being a world-class, brilliant actor, sometime director, legend, he's also a brilliant hotelier, apparently.
Oh.
In fact, he takes, much like Ace Rothstein, takes tremendous joy in the quality of a hotel. I mean, it's a passion of his. He is teamed with the head chef of Nobu, and he has this other business partner. He's opened all these boutique hotels in Tribeca. He's very famous for his deals with Jay-Z. But, a really well-respected man of his field, isn't
Although,
it?
you know that he's kind of like legendary in catering services for never tipping or being kind of
You've got a lot of... What kind of snarky article were you reading about Robert De Niro this morning?
Honestly, this is... No, I mean...
They got the Niros.
Yeah. No, that's actually his nickname, kind of like No De Niro kind of thing,
Well, I can't defend that, Robert. Disappointed. Maybe he has a problem with the whole concept of tipping. I don't know.
I mean, he's so old that maybe he remembers the time when it wasn't customary to tip in the US.
Yeah, well, anyway, I'm a bit bummed out by that. But my point was going to be that Warsaw is getting a De Niro hotel. What do you think about this, Mike? I mean, his hotels are pretty well respected. Surely this is a boon for the city.
You know what? I would just love it if the next time Trump visits Warsaw, he stays in that hotel.
Yeah, that would be superb, wouldn't it? Yeah.
You're a punk. All right, okay. So we got an old person story. Poland's oldest Pole turned 114 today. She looks amazing. I mean, where are all the dilapidated rolls of wrinkly kind of flesh? I mean, she looks like 80. Yeah.
And interestingly, I mean, her eldest daughter turned
Tekla Unievitz.
Yeah, and her eldest daughter turned 91 on the same day.
No way. Yeah, I missed that bit. Jesus. She needs a bit of care. Lovely shot of her with the Prime Minister. He's laughing away.
114. She's the third oldest person in Europe and the 8th oldest person in the world.
She remembers when Poland wasn't Poland. She remembers World War I starting, then Poland regaining its independence, Poland losing its independence, and Poland regaining its independence as well. So she's been through all the hallmark moments.
Have we developed a kind of reflexive, kind of weird, old school network news, human interest vibe with these old people stories? Because we seem to have done a lot of them, actually.
Well, I think because, it's part of a kind of, when you have a kind of a broad-based kind of, palette of interesting, newsworthy topics, we want to uplift as well as depress our listeners. And because it's, it's an audio medium rather than television, we can't show you, amusing vegetables that look like, like human body parts.
Okay, so let's get back onto some serious topics here. The interior ministers of Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Czech Republic, Estonia, Latvia and Slovenia have sent a joint letter to the European Commission protesting any form of compulsory relocation
of immigrants
to their country because it's a fundamental kind of rewriting of several principles of the EU, in that all decisions are agreed unanimously and that these things need to be discussed. I think it's fair to say one of my favourite moments in political recent history was Donald Tusk's impassioned pleas. A lot of respect for the guy for this. He stood up and he really kind of blasted Merkel and Germany and told them that this would have implications. And he got quite specific, actually, about Polish domestic politics. He said, in my country, this will have implications. And he was dead right about that. And for anyone who thinks that this is an issue of, immigration, whether the concept itself is right or wrong, that is a completely false reading of this, absolutely, in my opinion, because this is about how the EU communicates, how it makes decisions, and it's really a key kind of issue here, because forcing member states to take on board things that they haven't agreed to is kind of, goes against the core ideologies of the whole project, in my opinion, Mike.
I mean, I would always argue that the EU is mainly meant as a trade union. So, the free movement of finances, labor, people, but citizens of the EU. But then the idea of them starting to impose certain principles and values and policies that all the nations didn't agree to, well, then it becomes kind of questionable. I mean, I start thinking right now, it's like, why do we have to have all the same license plates in the EU? Why? I mean, that's just popped into my head a few days ago. But when we're talking about the migrants and immigrants here, the question is, like, they came to the EU attracted due to the welfare state and the propositions in Germany and countries like that, but it was the border countries that had to take the first brunt of the hit. And now these propositions are not only forcing EU nations to take in people they don't necessarily want, but it also means you have people who came into the EU and now they're being forced to move to a different country than they initially wanted to. So
I mean, I've always argued on this show, it's gone back a while now, so I'll remind everybody, my argument has always been that Poland could have just kind of said, yeah, sure, because honestly, I don't think it's a hugely desirable end location for the class of immigrant we're talking about, to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, to be honest, really what they prefer is English-speaking countries, or at least countries that have a language that is kind of, spoken, worldwide, and preferably isn't that too difficult to get your head around. And, Polish, Hungarian, the Slavic languages.
Honestly, the numbers, the quotas that were discussed last time were measly, and Poland could have easily soaked up the concept of those numbers. And as I just said at the time, I very much doubt, just at a purely practical level, that the quota would have even been fulfilled because of the lack of familial and ties and desire to actually go to the country. So to me, it felt at the time and now as a necessary hell not to win. But when you see this many countries aligned on a Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Czech Republic, Estonia, Latvia, Slovenia.
Yeah, and it's not the normal far right extremist crazes.
Can I just say that it refocuses the argument in a way that is much more important, in my opinion, is that the EU has to be a body that agrees on how it makes its decisions. It doesn't have to agree on the decisions, but there has to be agreement on how the bloody decisions are made, and the whole thing could unravel. And as we all know, any regular listeners, I'd hate to see that. I'm a big supporter of the EU with all its flaws and all its warts, gentlemen. Okay, so moving on to a guy who looks like Harry Potter, and a story that I was very happy to see. I'll tell you why I was so happy to see it. I love an old story about exams in Ireland. In Ireland, it's a news fetish. You know, what was the unfair poetry question on paper 2? You know, the bastards. You know, little Johnny's never going to get into college now. And this endless scrutiny, we kind of make it into the educational sports games kind of thing. But I was happy to see that you have these stories here too. A Google search spike was noticed by the department's education snoops surrounding a potential question surrounding the poem The Wedding. Mike, are you familiar with Wesel?
Wesela, yes. Even actually a part of Krakow was named after it because it happened here by Wyspiański.
Yeah.
I got close.
Wesela, turn of the century, Młoda Polska kind of era of poetry to kind of rebuild the Polish national identity at that time, just before Poland was reintroduced to the world scene. And it's one of those poems, or it's a story in poem form that was a major part of Polish national identity, and it pops up on these exams quite regularly. But the funny thing here was that these questions are supposed to be secret, hidden. Nobody knows about it.
It is a bit suspicious that everyone started Googling Wesel fantastic elements all at once.
Yes.
Well, yeah, in fact, it wasn't just the poem itself or the narrative. It was actually a particular, how does this relate to or what are the fantastic elements in this?
And this could have been, if it had happened a few minutes after the exam started, then you could have been like a news reporter heard it. And the thing is, this is a question that probably maybe 3 people a day ask. So if all of a sudden 20 ask, the statistics go up, by 800%. So it's a spike.
We need to get Harry Bosch on this. I'll say no more. Those who know. Those who don't, fuck off.
But anyway,
excuse the language. Okay, so I want to talk about a train station. A fabulous train station. A train station.
This will be Bronowice, yeah.
A train station that the people of Bronowice have been waiting a long time for. Mike, I have to say, I was kind of blown away by the visuals. It looks amazing.
No, it's fully modern. It's supposed to be kind of a transportation hub in that part of town in Bronowice.
10 minutes to the airport?
Yeah, basically, because there's the line that goes from the Wieliczka through the main train station up to the airport, but only stops in a few random places. Now it's going to stop in Bronowice as well, which is like a kind of a hub area in this part of town on Armia Krajowa. So it's really going to, if you want to drive to the airport from there, it's 20-30 minutes if there's no traffic. If you're taking a taxi, same thing, bus, etc. But all of a sudden, in a pretty densely populated area, you can get to the airport in 10 minutes from there. So it's going to be an intersection for other train lines to get to Częstochowa, to go to Katowice. It's going to become the next major train kind of hub in Krakow.
Mm. And from June 26th, direct train connections to Zakopane will return for the summer season, Mikey.
Yes, it will be. It's a couple of days from now. We're starting the summer season when it comes to train schedule. So if you were used to a train schedule, look into it right now because it's going to change for the summer.
Large scale infrastructure, when it rolls right up against your door, when the sand's at your foot, Josh. I mean, literally,
yeah.
Outside, when you walk out of KrakCast Towers, you're confronted with a gated beach and a construction site. And
there is no pavement outside
and a worryingly large holes everywhere. That you're terrified they're going to discover another entrance to a 1,000-year-old part of the sea.
Yeah. There's a pyramid down there somewhere, I think.
But there's a but.
Yeah.
When I see Bronowice station completed, its crossover tracks, it's multifunctional kind of, flexibility. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
An excellent piece of design, something like Galeria Krakowska, where, it all came together in the end, and I'm proud of them.
Although it is, I should just say that kind of part of the reason this is in the news is not just the fact that it's opening, but also the slightly kind of, shall we say, kind of tinged comment that it was actually due to open 2 years ago. And so the various kind of finger pointings and blame kind of placing has been going on, whether it's with the relevant local authorities who commissioned this, whether it's with the contractors for not fulfilling the obligations. Everyone's saying, no, it wasn't me, it was him or them, and so forth and so forth. But I suppose we should celebrate the fact that it is going to open now.
Just 2 days from now, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a great achievement for the city, and I'm thinking this tram line we're looking at now, the bridge, it's getting there. There's a lot of big projects, and kind of I don't mean to be controversial, lads. It's what gives me a sneaky little semi about the underground projects, you know. I'm just kind of thinking, you know, you live through it, you take it on the chin, and it's there for 100 years, you know. And a beautiful tunnel. I love that tunnel that goes, you know, from Mogilska up to the gallery. I just always think, oh, God, I love tunnels. Anyway, I'm just trying to go with Mike here. He's looking at me like, not today, Dave. Okay, so a story that caught my eye, Mike, because I think it's going to be huge in one of the most predictable ways possible, a violent right-left debate that goes nowhere and nobody learns anything. It's about well, actually, no. I mean, this is time sensitive. This part of it, from August 1st, 2020. The current Polish law states, am I correct, that communist apparatus crimes cannot be prosecuted? Well, so there's kind of a deadline on the statute of limitations. Exactly. And President Andrzej Duda said that communist crimes should be prosecuted in the same way as crimes of genocide. You would like to think that sentence then goes on to list some of the crimes, wouldn't you? I mean, what are we talking about here, Duda? I mean, are we talking about active members of the Polish elite or the government that were involved in genocide? You know, it seems like an outrageous comment to make. What do you think about this, Mike? I think this is going to be the start of a big story.
It is somewhat vague, and this is definitely election time kind of argument going on. The whole idea of like communist crimes is, well, a lot of it makes sense. It has to do a lot with judges that made certain rulings that were obviously against even the laws of the time, convicting people to death or to long-term sentences. And there's still a lot of these people still alive. That's a surprising thing. Collecting state pensions, etc. But those aren't the only kind of crimes they have in mind.
Basically, have been in power for 5 years. Who have they taken forward, really serious, murderous cases against?
They really haven't done it. They talk a lot. They talk a big game, but yeah, and this is why this thing is obviously an analytical thing. They'll pull it out there. They'll lengthen the time for the statute of limitations.
Genocide is a trigger word. I've been kind to Andrzej before. You're getting the boot now, son. Don't be fucking loose with your words like that. Some words you got to be unloose with.
No. I think this is provocative. By any definition of the word.
I'm glad you were talking. I want to finish tonight by talking about a beach or a reservoir or Bagri. It's not a place I go to that often. I'm going to be honest with you. I've been there a few times. It's charming. It's delightful. But Josh, I'd like you to paint our listeners a picture, because this is where we'd normally bring the big fella in, isn't it? This is Baldy's territory. Big time. All sandaled up. He loves Sandland.
Well, we discussed this in the past, that kind of every year there's like a people's budget kind of allocation where like the citizenry get to kind of vote on what do they want this allocation to be devoted to. There's been previous things about metros and stuff like that, which obviously nobody really has any serious interest in apart from one of the contributors. But this year the winning kind of suggestion is to modernise and redevelop the leisure facilities around the Bagri Reservoir on the southeast of the city, which is, I think they're talking about putting in a kind of an artificial beach, toilets, and possibly some kind of refreshment facilities, and just generally making it a nicer place, so that people go there anyway, and just making it a bit more of a better experience. And I think putting toilets in is certainly going to be a major step forward in that regard.
I know there are water sports and things actually.
Oh, very good. Yeah. Straight from toilets to water sports.
Oh, Joshua. Man. Did you just do a filthy piss sex joke? Jesus Christ, dude. Control yourself. 1.5 million zloty, Mikey. I'm guessing the renovations can be done for that budget in a few months. We're not talking about some grand project here.
Well, they could do it for this season. The problem is this has to go through the normal, bureaucratic nightmare procedures. So by the time they choose a company that will do it, a design, etc., and actually go ahead and do it, we might not see it this year. There's hope that it will be available. I hope so, too, because I've heard great thing about Bagri. But one of the main reasons I don't get it is because there's no infrastructure. I prefer Crespinov, which is freaking ugly.
Bagri does have a couple of little bars and huts, and you can get a beer and stuff. It's not it's not.
I think also car parking is an issue as well.
Yeah, it's not well developed, but it's actually, that's kind of its charm. It feels like a space carved out of a city. Just to have a bit of, what's the word I'm looking for? An oasis, but not quite. Watching my pictures in Oasis.
yeah, I think actually that's a pretty good.
Well, kind of shitty Oasis that could become a real Oasis.
Well, they're going to put palm trees in and dates.
And, drunken Mancunians. Oh, my God. Yes. Oh, now I'm making the fucking shit jokes. Right, okay, it's time to get out the door. All right, $1.5 million zloty seems worth it. Why not? We spend a lot on roses and flowers anyway, as Mike thoroughly approves of. Garden boxes, Mike loves them. Okay, good night.